So when you tell people, there's a restaurant where you can go in, you can sit down, you can have your meal, and at the end of it, you'll get your bill, and your bill will say $0.
So your meal has already been gifted to you by people that came before. Yeah.
The reaction that a lot of people meet that with is, are you kidding me? Like, is this for real? What's the catch?
Wait, what do you mean they got to give it to me? Somebody pay for it.
But if they give it a chance, if they sit down and they actually go through that experience.
So there's no prices on the menu. At the end, you'll get a bill and it says $0, and you are invited to pay it forward however you wish.
And then it's very hard not to just give in to that generous spirit. And when you have an environment where you receive unconditional generosity from strangers, it starts to reframe how you look at the world. And that's the beauty of this Karma Kitchen. We started Karma Kitchen, looking at the way traditional society operates. We were looking at the narrative, and so much of it was focused around what was going wrong. And that wasn't the reality that we were experiencing. We were seeing everyday people all over who were doing what they could in their own communities. And so we thought, well, how do we bring those pockets of light into the spotlight? Because every time you hear about someone making positive difference, it awakens that possibility within us. So we had run these different experiments, everything from having groups of volunteers, bringing them together and saying, what would happen if we went to struggling nonprofits and said, we will build you a website free of charge. Another was Daily Good, which is the inspiring news service. Another one is called KarmaTube, which is a channel for inspiring short videos. And in each of them, we'd seen a generative process because we were helping people help other people. So that led us very naturally into thinking about what are other spaces in which this can happen. And a pay it forward restaurant idea really appealed to us because there's something so universal about breaking bread. And now the question was, all right, how do we make this happen here? And the first thing was, we need a place. We need a restaurant that is going to be willing to go along with this crazy sounding idea. And so the word started to get out that we were looking, and we had a friend of a friend get in touch with us and say, hey, there's this restaurant owner in Berkeley. And so a couple of us went down and sat down with Rajan Thapa.
I saw young people thinking to teach people to be generous, and then they are trying to volunteer their time and energy.
And he heard the idea of a pay it forward restaurant, and he said, you don't have to tell me anything else. Just tell me what you need from my end.
So my restaurant, we cook the food, provide the space, but even if the expenses is more than what people pay forward, I will support them because the joy and the happiness that we create out of this small venue is a lot more than money can buy.
And so that suddenly made it very real. Suddenly all the pieces were there right in front of us. But when we opened the doors on that first day, we wondered if people would show up, and were we going to be sitting around, a bunch of volunteers really jazzed about serving a meal and have just very few people straggle in.
Welcome to Karma. Have you been here before?
I have, yeah.
Yeah? Awesome.
Oh, I haven't.
You haven't? Welcome.
But the community responded. We hadn't done major outreach or anything, but through word of mouth, the community had gotten wind of what was happening. People were really feeling kind of the possibility of what happens when you drop that kind of transactional mindset where you suddenly realize, oh, there's a person, serving my table. There's a person behind the scenes who I can't see who's doing dishes, and they're just doing it because they want to give. They want to serve me.
You're here to learn about service. You're here to experiment with generosity. There's no other reason why you would spend 8-9 hours on your feet.
And one thing that's beautiful is that it really blurs the boundaries between giver and receiver. So one week's guests could be next week's servers and dishwashers.
I've been going to Karma Kitchen since it was located in a different part of Berkeley.
I was always a guest, and today was my opportunity to work and serve others.
But we have a fixed cost for each week that we run Karma Kitchen. So when we started, we thought, well, this could sink or it could float, and we don't really have control over that, but let's see.
So it says, people often ask, how much did this meal cost?
When we tried to figure out what type of donation to leave, we thought how much we would pay at a restaurant for a similar meal, and then we decided we wanted to give more because we just like the idea of being able to give to the next person, and like the fact that there's kind of all these volunteers here.
So we found generosity is sustainable.
Sometimes I just go on the empty hands theory. I'm just like, whatever's in my wallet, I leave empty-handed. That's my plan.
And in the years since Karma Kitchen has started, we have never gone under.
You know, what I found is that the more you are in that space of generosity, thankfulness, and kindness and gratitude, I'm more happy. I think that I find more meaning in my life than otherwise.
So it doesn't begin and end with the meal that you're given in the restaurant. It triggers a set of questions, and it gives you a glimpse of a certain set of possibilities that lead into a new way of approaching your own life.